Trickle on in. Welcome back. Thanks, team, for all your amazing work this week, as always. Everybody else, make sure to check out all the links down in your breadbasket. Like, subscribe, share. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, share the videos with your friends. Come find me on x.com/shotdownmine. We will do the thing. I promise you, we'll do the thing. Episode 13, the sDm Files. This week we get started, of course, with Ross Coulthart, NewsNation, Reality Check, UFOs interrogation covered ups, the Rendlesham Forest incident with Gary Hesteling. So they tell the story of the Rendlesham Forest incident, basically between two NATO, UK, American military bases in England that, in hindsight, 40 years later, everyone knows had tons and tons and tons of nuclear weapons that they were planning on using on the Soviet Union should the need ever arise. The interview that really came close to breaking the internet. Harald Malmgren, Jesse Michels, the American alchemist. Presidential advisor, I directly handled UFO material. It's 4 hours of ufology awesomeness. This guy's like one of the guys. He's part of the conspiracy. He was a whiz kid. He saved the world by being one of the CIA guys who was in the room with the journals and stopped them from nuking the Soviets over the Cuban Missile Crisis and a couple others. He's kind of spent 6, 7, 8 decades telling us that he had nothing to do with UFOs. To kind of describe this as a deathbed confession, because he says, look, I had a lot of things to do with UFOs, like every type of UFO thing that you could think of. Primarily, they get into like the bluegill and Trinity kind of nuclear missile experiments. There's a great ufology, UFO sighting story right in the middle here where he talks about the bluegill videos and very casually talks about UFOs as tagalongs that show up in all of these nuclear and missile testing videos that were done in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. One of them, they, are testing, shooting down nuclear missiles by using X-ray weapons on them, which causes the nuke to blow up. And they do that, and on the second one, they very clearly see that they've also knocked down the thing that's falling around the nuclear missile that is nobody's thing. It's a UFO. They call them tagalongs. They casually talk about UFOs throughout the interview. It's really long. It's 4 hours. We're not supposed to be able to criticize it because he's dead. He died recently. But in addition to the firestorm that ignites over him now saying that he was deeply involved in all sorts of things UFO related. And you can believe him or not, even though he's spent, like I said, 6 or 7 or 8 decades telling you he wasn't involved with UFOs. And now, the week before he dies, he casually discusses his deep involvement with UFOs. His entire career with Jesse Michels. You can kind of take his credibility for what it is with that being kind of the backdrop. But then, in addition to the firestorm of argument that ignites within ufology and UFO Twitter, then you got the Wikipedia police decide to delete his page, delete his daughter's page, and delete Christopher Mellon's page, and that sets off a much bigger firestorm, not just in UFO Twitter, but starting with UFO Twitter, about the cover-up and the update and the government coming after someone like this guy who's spent his whole life saying there's no such thing as UFOs, but right before he dies, gives this interview. Now they're gonna delete his Wikipedia page, and so really we've been talking about that for like 4 days out of 7. Is this assault on Harald Malmgren, his daughter Pippa, and Christopher Mellon by these outside Wikipedia forces, because now he's talking about UFOs being real. And they rope Christopher Mellon in it's like they've been after him because this guy gives his grandpa's cane to Jesse Michaels. It's really kind of crazy, right? Next, Lou Elizondo, Letho Files, the greatest threat to humanity with Lou Elizondo. It's a short interview. They spent about half of it bitching about people who don't agree with Elizondo. And the second half is basically him announcing that he's going to be in a skiff at some point, probably, maybe, with David Grush and Christopher Mellon with the new Federal Secrets Task Force. Christopher Mellon shows up on the Chris Cuomo project. And mostly they're kind of talking about, the new American government, the Trump administration, is towing the line. Same exact everything as the Biden administration, and really every other American government that you can think of as far as UFOs go. And really they're kind of specifically talking about the New Jersey UAP drone flap. Chris Cuomo gets a really good dig in here about weapons of mass destruction during the Bush administration and the path to the Iraq war that Christopher Mellon was no doubt personally involved in, working for the Pentagon or the intelligence community as an advisor to the Senate. And Christopher Mellon even says, well, we did think there was weapons of mass destruction. So he does the government line in there. I'll say this is probably Christopher Mellon's best interview in a long time. He doesn't usually come off as very personable or likable. And so the juxtaposition with Chris Cuomo, the caricature, the ufologist journalist, is good. It's a good watch. It's an hour. Jake Barber, Matt Pines, Skywatcher Project, Unveiled podcast, watchmojo.com. It's 2 hours. They're not really defending their videos, but this is it's a little bit of a whitewashing, because you got Matt Pines on there, and they're talking about their videos and their process and the whole Skywatcher thing, and they're able to kind of skip over Jake Barber's origin story, which is, besides Skywatcher not having any videos until recently, and then the videos that they have released being pretty crappy, the next weakness on Skywatcher is Jake Barber himself, the way he comes off on interviews, his wackiness, and then his whole origin story, which is full of stuff that you basically have to take at face value, or he's lying straight to your face. He's a super secret special forces Air Force guy, not an Air Force mechanic like it says on his resume. And so they're not walking on each other as much. Matt Pines, like I said, really kind of humanizes Barber back to kind of like maybe a rational place, whereas when he's on his own, he kind of comes off as like a crazy. And I don't think it's 2 hours. They never show. I don't think in the whole 2 hours that they ever even show the tiniest little clip from any of the Skywatcher UFO videos, because they're not that good. So this is an attempt on the PR side by Matt Pines and the PR side of Skywatcher to kind of scoot past the crappy videos. Avi Loeb, Harvard physicist, searches for aliens. Avi Loeb, Debriefed, episode 35, Area 52, Chris Ramsay. They talk about a lot of stuff. They talk about Oumuamua, talk about Project Galileo, talk about Bob Lazar, Really everything. They're not really even physics broing it out. They're just kind of broing it out in the skiff, which is in ufology, in the recent modern ufology, in the interviews that Chris Ramsay's been doing. That turns out to be his skill and his talent, is he can get people into the skiff, do his magic or whatever they do before the show, and they're very human and friendly and friend pal like by the time they're on camera and talking about UFOs and aliens. And one of the most significant things in here is, Avi Loeb saying, well, I don't think if there was UFOs and aliens and the governments had that they'd be able to keep it a secret. That there'd be, over the course of this 8 decades or 9 decades or 100 years, that there'd be leaks and they wouldn't be able to stop it. And Chris Ramsay comes back and says, I think that's what's been going on, man. He says, I think that's what you just described as a way of saying it's not happening is what I think is exactly what's been going on. MH370, Ashton Forbes. The attempts to cancel him, deplatform him, have backfired spectacularly. And now he starts his transition arc from one of the ultimate ufology UFO Twitter villains to people's hero as he makes the alternative media podcast rounds, starting with Redacted here and Clayton. Tells his whole piece. It's only 40 minutes. Probably, even though they get into other stuff, you don't even need the whole 40 minutes. But one of the most succinct presentations by Ashton Forbes. And it's not on his own podcast. It's not on a Twitter space. It's on a pretty reputable and credible news source, Redacted. Clayton does his normal thing. Clayton's kind of approach to the ufology people is he doesn't debunk you. He doesn't attack you. He just lets you come on and tell your thing, and he treats you like you're telling the truth and like you're a normal person. And this is the final stages of complete humanization that's gonna allow Ashton to make the redemption arc happen from villain to hero. It starts here at Redacted. I mean, it started with Project Unity, Danny Jones Concrete trying to humiliate and bully the guy and cancel him right off of UFO Twitter. That has backfired, and a year and a half, 2 years later, here he is making the alternative media rounds, which is gonna turn into the real media rounds. Even going from Redacted to Jimmy Dore's show is actually a huge leap in the regular media sphere. Even though this is a comedian, and this is a comedian who's not even really making fun of him very much, but he could get off this show, and next week Jimmy Dore could bring on someone else, and they could totally just make fun of Ashton Forbes and the whole MH370 thing and free energy and everything, and that is only going to push his platform more into the humanized, credible arena. And to top it off, you get Ross Coulthart in here, reality check questions and answers with his co-host lady there. She asks him about Ashton Forbes and MH370, and Ross tells the whole story, because he was even being a reporter back then, reporting on the MH370 originally. And I think there's definitely some disconnect here, because I don't think Ross is being very truthful, because he's probably one of the reporters who has the capability and the contacts to go out and debunk everything that Ashton Forbes has said that has nothing to do with the orbs or free energy or any of that stuff. So, and he takes one little swing in here where he says, "Oh, look, I talked to one guy who's an expert, and he said that all the videos that Ashton Forbes is putting out there don't even resemble the types of videos that we see on the back end as intelligence operators and people in the intelligence community." I don't believe it. The way that Ross Coulthart said that and presented it in this tongue-in-cheek kind of debunker manner, I don't believe it. It actually makes me believe Ashton more And then, without mentioning the attempt to humiliate and bully him off of UFO Twitter to cancel him, he references the Danny Jones podcast where Ashton is basically telling Danny Jones to go fuck himself by telling him a little story about how buttholes might be similar, but that doesn't make them the same. And he's got Ross Coulthart talking about buttholes on his own show and praising Mick West for his awesome contributions to this topic. Pretty nuts, even for ufology, everyone. So there you go, episode 13. Ross Coulthart, Rendlesham Incident, Reality Check. Jesse Michels, Harald Malmgren. The Greatest Threat to Humanity with Elizondo, Letho Files. Christopher Mellon on the Chris Cuomo Project. Jake Barber and Matt Pine, Skywatcher on Unveiled and WatchMojo.com. Avi Loeb, Harvard Physicist. Area 52, Chris Ramsay. Ashton Forrest making the rounds. Redacted with Clayton Morris. The Jimmy Dore Show. And finally, right smack dab in the middle of Ross Coulthart's weekly Q&A session. Thanks again, everyone. See you next time.